Joining me live is Michael Shoebridge, Director of Defence Strategy and National Security at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. A very good morning to you. You just heard those stories. What do you make of this whole scenario?
Well, it's a pretty realistic reaction that the French are having. And we can say that they're sounding really, really emotional. But behind it is the fact that Australia and France were beginning to build a much deeper strategic partnership. And of course, in the middle of that was the submarines. Just 3 weeks ago, our two foreign and defence ministers met and they set a really ambitious agenda for the Australia-France relationship. And to have this happen, not even 3 weeks later, obviously is a deep shock. But I think we've got to look at what the really big driver here is to make Australia do this and shift so radically since just 2016 when we signed this deal. The world has to have changed. It's been changed by China under Xi. And I think the French understand that.
It had its problems, the deal, didn't it? It wasn't just all clear sailing.
No, the deal was delayed. The costs were looking like they were continuing to rise. And at the end of the day, we were getting a diesel-powered lead-acid battery conventional submarine. So that combination of things with the rising systemic challenge that China poses to the world meant that that wasn't a sensible path to continue on. That's what's led to this change. And really, Xi has achieved the trifecta of change to get Australia to shift from conventional to nuclear submarines and to get both the UK and US to agree to share such sensitive technology with us. That's a trifecta of difficult change from Xi, and he's achieved it in just 5 years.
In politics, particularly around this kind of posturing and military talk, and you're going to lose friends along the way if you're going to make tough decisions. Is this the right decision?
It is absolutely the right decision, and it's because of our security environment that's deteriorated so rapidly and markedly in such a short period of time. The nuclear submarines are part of this deal, but there'll be other technologies and capabilities that turn up much faster, like advanced missiles and unmanned undersea systems. And with the French, the bigger trajectory of French and European policy on the Indo-Pacific has a common view of the challenge of China. We will repair the relationship, but it's not going to be fast.
If we look at the history, or at least the history of the 20th century, I think a lot of people were buoyed by seeing President Joe Biden, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Prime Minister Scott Morrison in that trifecta. It was like the old band was back together in a way.
Yes, that's good. And there's a risk there at the same time, which is probably why it's so good that the Quad leaders meeting with India, Japan, the US and Australia is happening this next week. Because really the Australia, US, UK trilateral accelerates capabilities that are useful for the Quad members, India and Japan, and provides greater security in the Indo-Pacific by deterring China. So we've got to get used to working in a few tight, fast-moving groupings like the Quad and this new US-UK-Australia trilateral.
What about from a Chinese perspective? If you look at what's happening in China, obviously we've seen all the tariffs in and around Australian produce, but a lot of Australian producers have found other places to sell their product. Are they isolating themselves?
Yes, they are. And it's interesting, the Chinese reaction is almost not a reaction. It's just the tired old talking points about zero-sum gains, Cold War mentalities, win-win common destiny. It doesn't engage with how radically China's behaviour has changed Australian, US, UK and the Quad nations' behaviour. So China's environment has changed radically and it's become more difficult. And on the economic side, there's a clear trajectory now for Australia to make China's economy matter less. So this is a real indicator for Xi, if he's listening.
Finally, most of our knowledge, and I speak to myself and others that don't know anything about military hardware, the best we know about submarines is from The Hunt from Red October or those kinds of movies or books. But tell us about these submarines. Tell us where it takes us to.
Well, it's a whole new level of military power and deterrent capability. Unlike diesel submarines, these submarines have unlimited range and endurance except for food for the crew. So you don't know where they are, you don't know what they're doing. And when they do use their strike weapons to sink surface vessels or do land strike, they can get out of trouble really fast because they've got huge reserves of power from their nuclear reactor. So if you want to complicate an adversary's calculations about conflict and war, these are a premier way of doing that.
A lot more than the hunt for Red October. Michael, thanks for coming on our program this Sunday.
Thanks very much, Tim.